Hi, my name's Emma. Tell me, do you often do things you regret later? Well, recently this very situation happened to me. Perhaps some of you will condemn me, but what's done is done. Make sure you watch the story to the end to know what I'm talking about. Well, I was born and raised in a small provincial town on the outskirts of the state. My dad is a farmer, my mom is a nurse, and I also have younger sisters and brothers. There was never enough money in our family. Of course, we weren't hungry, but we couldn't afford anything extra. For example, expensive toys, gadgets, fancy clothes. My sister often wore out my previous dresses and skirts. So did I with my mom's old jackets and jeans. Fortunately, no one paid attention to this at school and no one teased me, because most of the families lived the same way we did. People in our town were modest and didn't know about luxury. One day, the whole class went on an excursion to the state capitol. They took us around the city. We visited an amusement park, went to a movie, and had dinner in a cafe. I was curious about everything, so I looked around with big eyes and a surprised face. Of course, the first thing that caught my eye was the way the big city kids were different from us. They had beautiful clothes. They looked well-groomed and neat, just like they've come out of a movie or an Instagram pic. The central streets were full of expensive shops of famous brands, and life was boiling around. I felt very offended this life was passing me by. So, by 12, I realized one thing. When I finished school, I would definitely leave my city and conquer the capital. First of all, I started studying hard so that I could go to college in my future. In addition, I started taking extra classes. I was also engaged in community services. I knew this was a way to get a grant or a scholarship. At 16, I had to go to work. My dad was often ill. He couldn't fully provide for the family. I worked as a waitress, I helped my mom in the hospital, and I delivered the mail on a bicycle in the morning. Of course, all this affected my studies a lot. So I graduated from school with low scores. I hoped I would still be able to enroll somewhere, but my hopes weren't fulfilled. I failed admission to all the colleges where I applied. I had to face a hard choice: go home and get stuck in a small poor city forever, or stay in the capital, find a job, and try to go to college again next year. I chose the second option. Since I already had some experience working in a cafe, I easily got a job working as a waitress in a nightclub. And I also worked part-time in a pizzeria during the day. These two jobs allowed me to pay for a small room, buy myself some food and some clothes. But such a difficult life was much better than the one at home. I met other girls who worked in a nightclub. All of them came from different towns to work in the capital, like me. Every one of us shared her story and plans for the future. The girls were very surprised I was thinking about studying and getting an education. They said I had a nice appearance, so I could easily find a rich guy, a young or an adult one, and just live a beautiful life. I must admit I had never thought about it. My parents always brought me up in such a way that if I wanted to achieve something, I must work hard. But things were totally different in a big city. Of course, I've always been a beautiful and attractive girl, but I didn't think I could use my beauty. Anyway, I reacted to this idea with a grain of salt. So, the girls invited me to a club with them, and we met some guys. At the very beginning of our party, a group of guys approached us. They met us and invited us to join their table in the VIP area. Everyone could easily say they were rich. They wore expensive and branded clothes. They ordered expensive drinks. They had the latest iPhones and the keys to cool cars. As it turned out, it was no more difficult to communicate with guys of this level than with guys from my hometown. We merely chatted, they treated us, and then they offered us a ride home. I liked one of them. His name was Nick. I sat next to him all the time at the club. We talked a lot, and he drove me home. Nick was a nice, cute guy, so I didn't see any point in refusing him when he wanted to kiss me goodbye. We exchanged phone numbers and decided to meet the next day in a cafe. That's how our relationship started. Nick liked to give me expensive gifts. He took me to cafes and restaurants and bought me beautiful clothes. Over time, I realized I was able to quit my job because Nick fully supported me. He even gave me money for my personal expenses. It turned out my friends were right. Why should I study and work if I could just find a rich guy for myself? I found out Nick's dad was the owner of a large company. Nick was his only son, and he would become the heir to their family business, and I would become his wife. I couldn't say I was particularly fond of Nick. Yeah, I was pleased to be in his company, I liked his gifts, but I was sure if a more promising option appeared, I would think it over. During my time with Nick, I got used to a rich life. I didn't even think about having a house. But why? After all, the future I've always dreamed of was waiting for me. Probably sometimes I was too demanding of Nick. I would throw him a photo of an expensive bracelet, hinting I wanted it as a gift. Or, for example, I would persuade him to go on a vacation together, even though he was in the middle of his semester at college. He couldn't refuse me, although sometimes I felt he wasn't happy with such expenses. But he taught me luxury himself. Let him continue to pamper me. Nick introduced me to his parents a year later. I understood he had serious intentions about me and he planned to marry me. I was worried before the parents' meeting. I was bound to make them like me. That's why I spent half the day before the family dinner in the beauty salon. I wanted to look perfect in their eyes. Nick's parents turned out to be very simple people. I thought we would arrive at a huge house, full of servants, cooks, and maids. But Nick's mom managed to prepare dinner herself and set the table. They lived in a large 2-story apartment, but I didn't notice any rare objects of art and luxury. Nick immediately explained his parents started from the very bottom. They developed a business together, so they got used to taking care of money. I would call it stinginess, but I didn't want to offend Nick and his parents. Nick's mom didn't look like a typical wife of a cool businessman. She had a natural beauty, almost no makeup, and she wore a cute and simple dress. His mom had so much dignity and respect that compared to her, I looked as if I was a backing vocalist and she was a star singer. Fortunately, the dinner went well. Nick's parents asked me to tell them about myself. They were a little surprised to know I neither studied nor worked. I had to lie. I planned to go to college later. Honestly, I was hoping to get pregnant soon, get married, and stay at a rich home all the time. At the end of the evening, Nick walked me home, saying I did a great job and his parents probably liked me. But after that meeting, everything went wrong. Nick became somewhat nervous, and sometimes he even forgot about our meetings. Besides, he stopped giving me gifts. When I asked him to buy me a new model of headphones, he just murmured something. I didn't like it at all. I tried to find out what was going on with him from his friends, but they just shrugged, claiming he was behaving as usual with them. One day, Nick came to my house looking terribly upset. I immediately asked what had happened. He told me his family had big problems. Some kind of trouble had happened to his dad's business, and he had lost everything they had. Nick, almost crying, said he had to sell both his apartment and his car to pay off his dad's debts. But even that wasn't enough. I couldn't believe what was happening. I had a brilliant plan and high hopes for my future with Nick, and now it turned out everything went totally wrong. Nick said with the last money he had, he bought me an engagement ring. Yes, it's not as chic as he had planned earlier, but it was important to him I was now next to him and supported him in his darkest hour. He handed me a box with a terribly cheap, tasteless ring. Did he really hope I would agree to marry him? Of course, I refused. I said that I wasn't ready for marriage yet, and anyway, now isn't a good time to talk about it. Nick was very upset. But if you only knew how upset I was. I had to look for a job again, or a new boyfriend. And the second option happened much faster. It was one of Nick's friends who also had rich parents. He told me straight he knew about Nick's situation, and he also said now Nick probably wouldn't be able to afford such an expensive and beautiful girl like me. I agreed with him. I didn't find the courage to meet Nick in person, so I broke up with him in WhatsApp. But it turned out everything was totally different. As soon as I texted Nick, he called me back and said, in fact, everything was fine with his parents' business, and they'd never gone bankrupt. It's just, during our family dinner, Nick's mom thought I was the kind of girl who usually needed only money from guys, and she suggested Nick test me this way. As you can guess, I didn't pass. Besides, a friend of Nick's also gave me a test, but I didn't pass it either. Anyway, it was a total failure. As a result, I was left alone with no money. Do I regret doing this to Nick? Of course. He really loved me, and I behaved so wrong. Do you think I should ask him for forgiveness? Like, say I was wrong? Everyone makes mistakes and so on. If he still loves me, maybe he will forgive me. I'm looking forward to your advice in the comments section. If you liked my story, click thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to never miss new stories. Take care, guys. Bye.